to the Cajun dance and the Zydeco. Filet gumbo and a crawfish pie. Filet gumbo and a crawfish pie.
Welcome to Literary Gumbo, a continuing look at the world of writers, writing, publishing, and all other peripheral events. I'm Fred Klein, the chief stirrer, and my guest today is a mover shaker. He may not agree to it, but there's somebody who has accomplished more things in his years here in Santa Barbara, many years in Santa Barbara, than almost anybody else I know. So please, Steve, won't you, it's good to see you. I'm Steve
Wonderful
Gilbar.
to be here again. Yes.
Everybody should know Steve,
Please, yes,
who's
thank
here
you.
on some great new ideas, but I'm going to force him to go back to the early days of Santa Barbara and how you got started and how you sort of lit the fires of so many creative projects.
The early
including
years.
collections of writing. Didn't you also do something with the library early on? The whole historic, the early writers from
Yes,
Santa Barbara.
right.
So will you please go back and now impress me?
Well,
Yeah.
initially, I did some books, sort of collections of trivia and interesting things about books with names like, this was in the 70s,
Right.
the book and good books. And then I became
These were
really-
collections of published books.
No, these were actually, good books it was like good food, like restaurants, but it was books by types, by subject matter. So you could look up food, you could look up Middle Ages, whatever you want. It would be like the 5 or 10 best books. So this was brought out by Tickner and Fields, which
I
I think at the
remember
time was
Tickner and
owned by
Fields,
Houghton Mifflin.
Yeah. Very
Yeah.
impressive
It
publishing.
was a prestige publication that
Still
never
is.
sold.
What?
It didn't sell very well, unfortunately.
Oh, well.
I had great hopes. You know,
Uh-huh.
the one thing about a writer, you have a book and you put that thing out there and you're thinking, this is, they remember the term breakthrough. This is the breakthrough.
Breakthrough
how
book,
many
yes.
how many novelists have had the breakthrough? I think in this town there are some mystery writers that had, finally, this is going to be the breakthrough book.
Yeah.
And it happens or it doesn't happen.
No, you're
I
absolutely
never had a
right.
breakthrough, so I
But
never
what
gave up my day job.
But what I do know, as a matter of fact, it continues till today, because I read the New York Times, because I read Publishers Weekly, which is the industry publication, I see in advance the hot new book, something called what's the latest one? The GIF. I think it's the GIF. And so I quickly get a copy of it because this is supposed to be the breakout book, the one everybody's going to be talking about. It drops dead. It never makes it. And here I was all ready to impress people on how much I knew because I had read the new GIF, you know.
Who knows why?
Still goes on. Well, publishing is still, they are
crapshoot,
still,
isn't it?
still a crapshoot. It
Yeah.
absolutely is.
Yeah.
Before Marcia was trying to say that it really is in trouble now. I don't think the good old traditional publishing companies are in trouble yet.
This is because people aren't reading books?
She
you
thinks
or-
that people that writers are now finding other alternate ways, especially if you can no longer get published by Knopf or Farrar Straus or whatever the case might be.
Yeah. I have a theory about that.
Yeah.
See, back in the day, I'm talking the 60s or 70s.
Okay, those
being
are
a
my
writer
days. Those
was-
are my
okay,
days.
Right, being a writer was really cool. It was sort of beat, bohemian. It was a great thing. People read, Kerouac and Vonnegut and Heller, and so people loved books. And sort of talented people would want to be a writer. Maybe they like to live the writer's life, hang out in cafes, and it was very exciting. I think today, a young talented person would like to be a filmmaker.
Oh yeah.
Which is immediate, right for television.
Yeah.
I realize it's collaborative. It's not your own thing, but being a writer, you spend a lot of time by yourself in your room. These guys, they can go out there, it's sort of being on a set, making a movie,
Sure.
and the possibility of a huge payoff if it makes it.
But
and
even
also, we're singer-songwriter. Back before Dylan, people did other people's songs. It was Tin Pan Alley. It was sort of boring. Now you get really talented songwriters who sing.
Really?
And
Name two.
Well,
I haven't found
Joni Mitchell, all those people.
Well,
I'm
those
talking-
were the- but that
no,
was a
but
period. That
before
was
that,
Joni.
people like Sinatra, they
Oh,
would,
no,
they
you-
would
no.
do other people's songs.
That's my.
Now
that's,
you have to write
That's my
songs.
period. Was
Okay,
was the
but since
Sinatra
then, I
period.
don't keep up, but the people that are popular write their own material.
but
and people listen. I'm not talking about
But
rap.
again, just look at Hamilton. I mean, Hamilton was rap.
Right.
Was pure rap, except for 2 songs, which were totally Broadway songs in
Yeah.
the middle of this whole
Yeah.
thing. But I mean, it was just mind-boggling. It was so wonderful.
Yeah, it was. You were surprised.
And yet, I can't believe that rap can become a continue part of the whole Broadway musical era. Because musically, it's still very narrow. It's the lyrics that are the exciting.
Right. I don't think it's going to take over Broadway. And rap is just one segment of pop
Yeah, but
music.
it's what
There's still-
Hamilton is, and it's what
Right.
it's what really.
But there's still people that are sort of the heirs to the folk tradition.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
they-
You're
anyway,
right. The
they're-
Joni, you go back.
But
to
their
Joni.
lyrics are interesting.
Yeah. Oh yes.
It's
oh
not
yes.
Moon, June, Croon,
Yeah,
Spoon.
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
so I think somebody that wants to write might rather be a songwriter.
You know what? My
Yeah.
brother is the first one in Los Angeles is finding schools that can have curricula to develop people to write Broadway musical shows. USC, UCSB, USC, UCLA, Santa Monica College. He now has programs that are beginning to develop. This is the first year.
Yeah.
Develop people to develop Broadway stuff.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Great.
No place else in the country does it happen.
I think it totally went off.
Let's
on a
get back to
tangent.
you.
Where
We're not
was
going to
I?
get to you at all.
Oh no, about books. So I wrote
All right.
book. These are books about
That's
books.
right, you
Then
wrote
I
those
became
over.
interested in Santa Barbara. You know, when people move to Santa Barbara, they become enamored with the history and the beauty. And I wanted to do some anthologies about Santa Barbara. And so I did a couple of these called Tales of Santa Barbara, from Adobe days to Sue Grafton. And then I did a follow-up that was very successful locally. I mean,
Who published it?
John Daniel. And
John Daniel was among the last of the real
Right.
publishers here in
he
Santa
did.
Barbara.
Now he's in
Yeah,
McKinleyville.
up there somewhere. Yeah.
He still publishes them.
Yeah.
And then Dean Stewart, who I did one of the books, who was a writer with the News and Review, which is before the antecedent to the indie. And he would do pieces on literature, a very interesting guy. And we thought we should do a book about, this was an actual book, not an anthology, of history of literary Santa Barbara.
Oh.
Starting
okay.
with, go back to the Chumash folk,
You went
tales.
back that far.
Well, we said if literature can also include the spoken word or narratives, you could go back. And many of these were published and printed. But mainly the early days all the way up to the present day, which was the 80s at the time. And, I really felt a lot of these are obscure writers most people haven't heard of, but they were here.
But you did have some very impressive writers, right? In the early.
That lived here?
Yeah. I mean, besides Ross McDonald, going back before,
Right.
what the heck was I reading that Aldous Huxley spent some time out
Right.
here?
There were people who were here. The book could have turned out to George Washington slept here, like so-and-so slept 2 days
yes,
here.
Yeah,
I mean, almost anybody who came to California driving between here and LA and San Francisco
have to stop
would have
here.
stopped here.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I try to avoid that. I mean, Huxley he was at UCSB, he did a Regents lecture.
DJ
Christopher
Palladino's new book includes that.
I know. Actually, that's a fun book to read.
Isn't it weird? I
Yeah.
mean, that whole thing, I had him on the show. Yeah.
I bet you did. I wasn't here at the time it takes place. But
Yeah.
It's so
Because some of
period.
it's bizarre. I mean, he just, it's just amazing that what he was able to do with that 1958, 59
Right.
Santa Barbara.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, go back to.
So I found these people who were here, their names were written in water. Nobody remembers them, a lot of them.
All right.
So I thought if we only had one book that actually remembered them, because most of the stuff we dug out of old files in the newspapers, and we talked to a lot of older people who were old then, asking them to remember what it was like back in the day.
Yeah, sure.
Because we had things like Mountain Drive, and Bobby
Yes,
Hine, all that whole world,
section, that whole,
Yeah.
the,
and Bill Richardson. And it went up to the modern day, Grafton, T.C. Boyle.
Tom Boyle, yeah.
But there was an era which was exciting, which was when Ross McDonald, there was a writers group that would meet
That
over.
whole, they used to have lunches, yeah.
Yes, and they were.
Barnaby Conrad used to be part of that.
There was a guy
yeah.
named Paul Ellerby. Give it back to the lemon growers.
Yeah,
Can't even
Dennis
remember.
used to do it. Dennis
Right.
Lynn's was one.
And when you went there, you'd think it'd be really high-minded literary discussion about serious stuff.
Yeah.
It was always about who's paying the biggest money, and this was during the golden age of magazine writing,
geez.
when you could make a living writing for Collier's or Saturday Evening Post. You can really make a living as a freelance short story writer. Really can't do that except for the New Yorker, who publishes short stories.
We
anymore.
we published Ross McDonald. As a matter of fact, I still am doing Ross McDonald Awards.
Oh, that's
We're
continued.
still- yeah, yes,
We
we're going-
started that year. We were
You're
involved
right.
with you. I
Well,
remember that.
last year we gave it to Dennis. This year we're going to give it to Fannie Flagg.
Okay. I
Anyhow,
remember we started that, and I'm going over to a trophy shop.
Right.
Trying to buy
That's
a
where I've got to
trophy.
go. That's where I have to go.
It was Ray
to pick
Bradbury,
up
wasn't it? The first one?
Yes, to pick up to create the one for Fanny. Yeah.
That's funny.
Anyhow, go ahead. Yeah, see, you were part of the vital part of
Vital, got the
keeping-
trophy.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, I think we came up with this idea of an award, which is actually a very clever idea because you tell a famous writer we're giving you an award, they show up.
Sue, it's still in a lot of their bios.
Is
They
it
still
really
use
the
it, yes.
prestigious Ross
They
McDonald
still use
Award?
it. They still use
Okay.
it. Yeah, believe it or not.
Yeah. And yeah.
But then you helped begin Speaking of Stories, right?
Right. Well,
Right about that time?
Yeah, I needed something to relieve me from the ennui of my day job.
Which was your day job?
I was a lawyer.
I didn't realize you were a lawyer.
Yeah,
I-
but just me. I work for myself.
Did you graduate from the University of Michigan too? You're a Michigan grad,
Yeah.
like I am, like you are.
You went to Michigan?
I went to Michigan. Yeah, graduated in 1948.
Tommy Harmon? Or something
Tom
like that?
Harmon.
Was that,
absolutely.
but that was before that.
Yeah,
That was
yeah.
the
But then
30s, right?
I was 3 years in the service in between.
Ah, really? Wow. I was thinking, I graduated in 63.
You're a kid.
I know, baby. But I was thinking, now how long ago was 63? 54 years ago?
Yeah.
So when I was there in 1963, 54 years before that,
Yes.
what was, you gotta do the math on that one, that was like 1912 or something. Do you remember when they would have these alumni groups coming up, there'd be somebody from the class of 1912, these old people, and you see these pictures on the wall at the Union of these funny looking people in these old black and white photos.
I remember seeing that. Yeah.
I realize that when I talk about the 60s in Michigan, it seems like yesterday. If I talk to a kid going there now, it would have been like me talking to somebody that was there in 1912.
Yeah.
1912.
Me even less.
So it seems.
And it's much bigger than it was when you were there, and actually maybe.
I think
I
there are
think it was
more
only about
Michigan
10,000.
there are more Michigan alumni in the United States than any other school, I believe.
Really?
What's so huge? Just think about all the people who graduate every year, and their numbers
Yeah,
swell.
yeah. Anyhow, I didn't mean to interrupt.
okay.
We're getting to Speaking of Stories, which is still continuing to this
Oh,
day.
anyway, I used to listen to selected shorts
Oh,
out of New York,
Uh-huh.
where they would have actors reading short stories, just that, not acted out. And I thought it was great. And I listened to it on one of the local NPR stations because it was syndicated. And I said, wouldn't that be great if they came to town? But of course, they're not going to come to Santa Barbara. They didn't go anywhere except New York. And so I thought, well, why don't we do something like that? And the Center Stage Theater had just opened, and it was like this show committed to public access where you could actually rent it for a song practically. So I said, why don't we do that? And because I was doing anthologies, I knew a lot about short stories. I read Publishers Weekly and The New Yorker, and so I knew cool short stories. I knew nothing about actors. But it turned out there's a whole bank of actors, usually ex-Hollywood actors
Yes,
living in
yes.
Montecito,
Around here,
dying for
yes,
something
you
to
really,
do.
Yes, you really had it, you know.
You better catch a falling star.
Yeah.
You know. And so I thought about a program. We could do 4 of them. You could rent it out, and maybe have 3 actors. And I asked somebody who were the actors in town.
Well, there's no wait. Just before we went on, you were mentioning something you're doing now, and you dropped an actress's name that.
Karen de la Peña.
Karen, whatever happened to her? I used to somehow on my computer. I used to get updates from her when she moved away.
She moved to New York City.
And what's happened to her?
Well, she pursued
I'm sorry
a career
to
there.
jump up.
No, yeah.
And you say she's going to be here?
She came back. She
I'm
happens to be
jumping
in town.
ahead. I didn't want to go there.
Right. This weekend, whenever this shows, is the May Speaking of Stories. We do it 4 times a year.
Oh, and she's going
to be reading a story.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
That was that. So
Yeah,
it's her comeback.
I used to be a regular on that.
I know.
Anyhow, so we can still go back.
So we started at the Center Stage Theater. I think had a capacity of
then you've
90
gone.
people.
You went to the Libero.
It was so successful. We went to the Victoria. Did 2 shows.
Yeah.
Wow, this is successful. Let's go to the Libero, which has 600 and some seats. And we did that. It was great success. But like all things, it goes up, it goes down, and then it was waning. Who knows why?
But every once in a while, it creates excitement.
It was great, but we were not filling it up, and people. There's always some new kid in town, but it still endured. But it was getting expensive to put on a big theater like that. So we went back to the Center Stage where we fill it up.
Well, it's
do 2 shows.
It's a perfect location.
It's people that love it.
Yeah.
It's not a money maker. It breaks even, and those who like that kind of thing.
But that was so imaginative. It was still so great to do.
Yeah,
and the fact that it's still maintained.
Yeah, come on down, folks. It's great.
Yeah. Monday nights.
Sunday afternoons at 2 and Monday nights at 7:30.
Okay, now that was one success. Now keep on going.
List of success. Well, that's the only thing that endured for 20 years.
But he also in between. Were you
I keep
becoming
doing
a
books.
painting? Do you? No,
when I retired. I retired from law.
After you retired from law, okay.
And I saw a book in a bookshop of collages by Richard Meyer, who's an architect, but his hobby is he makes sort of abstract expressionist collages out of paper. And I looked at it, I said, wow. I said, I could do that. I've always liked art, but I'm not a painter. I've never taken an art. In fact, I was intimidated. I never took an art class in school. I never thought I had any talent. Although my sister's an art teacher, my brother's an architect, but I'm not really very handy that way. So I started doing that. It was really fun. And this was 2001. Just started self-taught, did this, took maybe a class or 2 at the adult ed, and basically imitated. That's how you do it. I was starting to become aware of this field, looking how other people were doing and saying, what, you can do that? Wait a minute, you can do that? And it grew and grew, and then I started adding paint, so it became mixed media or 3D.
And then you did by Joseph Cornell's
assemblage, whatever it's called, boxes.
Love those.
Yeah.
Oh, love those.
Yeah, so it's been fun.
So, but I know you're talking now about getting rid of them in a sense. But did you have showing? You had showing.
No, I've had lots of. I've had lots of shows. But most shows, if you go along, there's not a lot of red dots, unless you're famous. If you're Hank Pitcher, maybe you can sell a lot of paintings. But if you're somebody like myself, who's really an amateur, you don't make a living as an artist. So I joined the Abstract Art Collective and different groups, and they're all people like myself who are pretty
Sunday
talented.
painters kind of thing.
Yeah, but they're good. Sunday painters here are good. If you go to the Faulkner Gallery and see like some of the watercolor shows.
Yeah.
It's surprising. The problem is there's a lot of talented artists, but very few patrons. Who buy the stuff.
Well, Sullivan and Goss, I still think
that's a different
Frank.
Yeah.
Frank did well. Matter of fact, I went in just as he was giving up the gallery and turning it over, and I went up and I said, okay, I'm interested in Red Grooms, which was one of my favorite artists. I have some stuff at home. I don't know if he's still alive or not. but they had one piece still available of Red Grooms.
Oh, I have a piece of his. I'll give it to you.
Red Grooms?
It's one of Fats Domino. Do you have that one?
Oh, no, I don't have that one. Oh, geez, no, I was...
He didn't make it. He made these cutouts that you could buy and assemble your own Red Grooms piece. My brother did it.
See, they did that, yes.
Yeah.
No, I actually have some other stuff. No.
You have real Red Grooms pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was fun. Pop art. That was a great period.
Anyhow, I loved art along the way.
Yeah, I loved art. I just never thought I could do it.
Nor did I. No, I certainly didn't.
But I never considered myself a real artist, like Pitcher and some of the people that are trained, have MFAs.
But so you, first you get the authors, the writers. Now you're getting the artists.
Well, I'm not getting there. I be one. But I don't assemble them. I don't curate shows or anything. But I've always done books.
Yeah.
I mean, so after doing these literary books, and I've done the Santa Barbara books, I did another one, which is Santa Barbara Stories, which was fiction, starting with Ross McDonald, going through T.C. Boyle, and having. Now these were all previously published. So these were actually short stories. So they were good. They had been appeared elsewhere. They weren't. I wasn't having to read unsolicited solicited manuscripts or stories. And then I started, when the POD, publish on demand craze came around, I said, hell, I could just do anything for fun. And because finding a publisher, that takes forever.
Yes, it is, if you can find one.
Right, and with artists, it's the same thing. It's marketing your work, trying to get somebody to show it. It's such a hassle. So I did a bunch of do-it-yourself books and things that interest me, but nobody else. Because what happens, I was done like Create Space, and there's no budget for advertising. It appears on Amazon, and it's at number 1,543,229. You've ever seen what it would rank because they have so many books. It's the bottom of the list. No, it sells. Maybe if somebody stumbles, you wouldn't find it because you'd have to look for it.
That's true.
That's what I mean. If you stumble on it, maybe you'd find it. But I enjoyed doing it. It was a process, and I like research. I mean, that's the best part. I love going to the library, looking for pieces, looking things up, putting them together, and then you assemble them in a book. Maybe somebody collects butterflies, and they put them up in a wall. They do something. So it's stamp collecting. So I did a book of eponyms, words that come from people's names.
Oh, yes.
Like Lynch or Pasteurize. There's tons of them. And did one of toponyms, which are places, words named after places.
Yeah.
And then the last one I did was places in California that are named after people.
Oh.
I know this is really archaic.
So do you get distribution on those? I mean, because you should get all over.
I tried. I sent a postcard to every library in California. I never got it because it's very difficult to do that.
No, but there's some publishers that might be interested in that.
I didn't try.
Yeah. We got to talk about that because
we
only have 6 minutes left, and
I
want to talk about
so do I.
I want to talk about what's happening now.
6 minutes. Okay, so I'm doing this.
No, so it turns out that the public library will be 100th in November of this year.
Correct.
And you're on a committee.
Right.
And tell me, okay, so
I'm on the board of the Friends of the Santa Barbara Public Library. And when I heard about this, my anthology brain said, wait, we could have all these writers, so many writers in this town, write a piece about libraries in their life. Because, writers tend to have been library rats when they were kids. Sure. And so, but before I could do this, I needed to get a star attached to the vehicle, as we say in Hollywood, a name.
Yeah.
So I wrote to T.C. Boyle, who I know peripherally, goes to the library a lot. He's a good guy. Good guy.
Yeah.
See, Tom.
And also speaking of stories, he is
that.
so fabulous at speaking his own stuff.
And he promotes it. So he said, would you write a foreword? I'd love to, Steve, old man. Yes, anytime, sure. great. So now I went to people saying, well, T.C. Boyle is writing the forwards. And so it sounds like, so some of these people said, wow, I could be in a book with T.C. Boyle. So then I just sent out invitations in November to every writer I could think of by email. Would you write a piece? You're not going to get paid. Think of it as a donation to our beloved library, and it'll be assembled in a beautiful book, and you'll get a free copy. That's about it. And they responded. They were thrilled. But getting some of the name writers was a little more difficult. They don't need to be in this book. But I got them. So some of the people in the book are actually...
So how many, do you have any, what's the number, do you know? Like
over
100?
80.
Over 80, okay.
260-page book.
Oh, wow, okay.
It's much bigger than I ever thought it would be. I kept getting writers because I wasn't sure a lot of the writers I solicited would come through. I told them in November I must get it by April 1st. So in that period, I kept thinking, what if I don't get enough? And I get this very thin little book. So I kept getting more and more, and then it was over 80. It's a big book. And there's a lot I didn't get. A lot of people didn't answer.
Really?
Yeah, I was really surprised. Because
I
I
figured
figured
that Shelley didn't?
No.
Wow.
A lot of people didn't, and I don't know why, because they never even answered.
Yeah, well.
Yeah. So there you are. And so, but I have enough. And I also have a couple deceased writers. It turns out Ray Bradbury, who is not a Santa Barbara, but so well associated
Absolutely,
with the
because
town.
of the Writers' Conference.
The Writers'
of
Conference,
course,
and he
of
did
course.
so much.
Yeah.
He wrote this incredible short story about, it's sort of
About Santa
semi-autobiographical about the kid in the library. And, you know,
Oh, what a library needs to have.
he never went to college. He says he was educated in libraries.
Huh.
And
believe
so
it.
it was a great story. And I talked to, do you know Joshua Odell?
No.
He published Zen and the Art of Writing, this book that Ray Bradbury did. He has some rights in some of Ray Bradbury's stuff. He used to work for Nola Young. And he's a book collector. And I said, I'd love to get the rights to it. He said, oh, well, they're held by Don Cogden, he's dead now, but boy, he's tough. He ain't going to give you nothing. And so I wrote to them. Oh, and then I asked Joshua, who's the actual heirs to the estate? Well, he has these daughters, Ray Bradbury. And I said, I know Ray, he so loves Santa Barbara. I know his daughters would want you to allow us to do this.
Good boy.
And so I get this letter, you may have the rights to it.
So
Contribute a
there's a
piece.
big thing in November, right? Because
That's a much bigger piece. That's done by the Library Foundation, which is a separate group. So it'll be, and the library has many activities planned between now and then.
Well, I want to do a show just on the library because they're doing things now that I couldn't imagine.
You could talk
the
to some,
library.
Gumbo and a crawfish pie. Tastes so good to say, ooh, yeah, yeah. Hey, baby, don't you wanna go to the Cajun dance in the Zydeco? Filet gumbo and a